Hey, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another conversation that we have here today at the Policy Panchayat, right? Today we have a guest, who straddles very different worlds. Someone I've genuinely learned a lot from, and he works in an area that I'm not very familiar with, right? So it's just very always interesting getting to meet Sridhar. Sridhar is, a senior director at the MIT WPU World School of Government, but he's done like 10 other things and all equally cool, if not cooler. So Sridhar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you so much, Yash, for having me at the Policy Panchayat. And well, I think it's been an interesting journey, for someone uh, with the undergrad in technology and having gone to IIM Bangalore to pursue my masters. I think my first 10 years was completely dedicated to look at technology and consulting space, right? And had an opportunity to go to Stockholm School of Economics for half a year and study development economics and innovation. And that's where, there was a spark that passed through my mind looking at how Sweden and Stockholm is as an economy, as compared to my previous visits to US, where it was a very different experience. And that's where I realized that the way the Swedish economy governs itself has got a lot of lessons to India, right? It's not about being rich, it's about how well you run your public services. And
Yeah,
that was the inspiration for me to come back and plunge into understanding governance. And over the last 15 years, I've done many things, including volunteering with Association for Democratic Reforms full time way back
yeah,
in 2009 for
right.
doing the election watch.
Hmm.
And ADR was back in news last week for getting the electoral bonds
Absolutely.
revoked in
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
And that's been the kind of impactful work that I was fortunate enough to be part of early on in my uh, change journey, and spent the next couple of years looking at impact investing. I was part of looking at a large international fund which wanted to understand business impact and social impact.
Right.
Got a chance to work in the informal sector economy,
Hmm.
understand why plumbers, masons, electricians are not making more money when Sridhar and Yash are busy in high-paying tech jobs, but
Yeah.
the filter down effect or the flow down effect is not happening for all these other jobs. The world opened up into the realm of migration, information asymmetry, and the whole skill development space that is a big challenge in India.
Yeah.
I was able to bring together various thought leaders and cutting edge organizations who are working in this skill development space to IIM Bangalore for a conference on informal economy. And that was a really eye opener where how we could get diverse experiences, impactful organizations back into academia and learn from each other. And post that engagement, IIM Bangalore reached out to me and said, could I be the chief operating officer for the Center for Public Policy
Right.
uh, at IIM Bangalore? And that was a very important, pivotal moment for me, where I could bring in a whole lot of my field experiences of working with very different organizations, my technology experience being a computer science graduate, and also a managerial guy to look at how do we manage things at a large scale. So we were able to do very impactful work at the Center for Public Policy. We worked a lot on the policy hackathons, where we could look at large data sets and bring out innovative policy ideas. And I was also requested by Government of Karnataka to help set up the right to public services in Karnataka. And that advisory role with the Government of Karnataka was phenomenal experience of seeing how Sarkar works from inside,
Hmm.
of working with the ministers, the bureaucrats, and everybody else involved in rolling out reforms and changes. And that journey opened up the ability for us to think simple, scalable designs and roll it out at the state level. So Sakala, which is a program, is today one of the
Yeah.
best implementation of public services. And many states have learned from there. And today you're talking of doorstep delivery of services, which is possible today only because a whole lot of effort has gone into digitizing the whole governance process in India. When we started, we did not even have proper data to benchmark and say, are we doing better than last year?
Yeah.
And today you are able to kind of work with a whole lot of systems, processes, and process flows.
Right.
And this is all happened in the last decade, and I have been able to ride this journey. 2013 is when I dived into the world of politics.
Okay.
Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan of Lok Satta Party invited me to contest the 2013 assembly elections in Karnataka. And I contested elections in 2013. Though I did not win elections, but I got 6% votes, spending less
Oh.
than 4,000 rupees, 4 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
And that showed us the power of democracy, of how somebody who's not a very public figure could contest elections,
Yeah.
could could campaign effortlessly, do ethical fundraising. 80% of my donations came from within Hebbal constituency. So how can you kind of do this? And
Yeah.
the guy who won just got 6 times more votes than me. And it's anybody's guess how much money he spent, right? But that showed me hope in bringing about change.
Yeah.
Uh, so post elections, got back to being the chief programs officer at the Bangalore Political Action Committee. Here is where we designed and rolled out the B Clip program,
Okay.
where we trained people who want to be corporators. And that program is thriving very well now. As of now, there are about 500 people who are trained in the city of Bangalore who are aspiring to become corporators. And
Right.
some of them have gone to contest elections and win them as well.
Right.
And post that became the CEO of Namma Bengaluru Foundation, where we were able to, through a lot of civil society organization, writing to the government, as well as writing to engaging with judiciary through the public interest litigation process, we
Right.
were able to bring in a whole lot of reformative agenda and urban governance agenda back into the governance of the city. And one of the example has been how Belanduru Lake is today no longer frothing and catching fire, or how you don't have ill-conceived projects like the steel flyover, which was forced upon city of Bengaluru, and we were able to get it stalled through sustained civic action. In 2019 is when I came back to academia. I was missing the whole experience that I had at IIM Bangalore, and I started teaching at various places. And 2020, I became the founding director of Kautilya School of Public Policy, where over 3 years, we were able to set up a good Desi public policy school with good international frameworks, but those frameworks which are adapted to Indian needs. And it's been a year since I delved into the political leadership and governance space. And here at MIT School of Government, it's been a fascinating journey where we have created a wonderful ecosystem of people, youngsters, thought leaders, who want to come in and plunge into the world of politics.
Yeah.
So that's 2.5 decades in a nutshell.
I don't know where to begin, Sridhar. So, and what's most fascinating to me is the sheer diversity of the work you've done, but with some sort of a singular thread as well, right? Tying much of this. So from, like a CHF International, right? To, of course, being the CEO at IIM Bangalore's CPP, right? Center for Public Policy, leading programs at BPAC, an institution I really have a lot of respect for, being the CEO at Namma Bangalore, right? So that's again broader civic space, so to speak, right? Founding director at Kautilya, now, of course, at MIT WPU School of Government. And if I'm not wrong, you also wear some other hats in your free time, right? Like I think urban policy specialist, something like that.
Yeah.
Firstly, wow, okay. That's quite, that's a lot that not just that you have done, but to my interest and I think to my audiences that you have had the chance to witness, right? So building on that, Sridhar, how have you seen this space, change and evolve in the past, whatever, couple of decades that you've been around, be it in terms of opportunities or skills or just the layout of this the broader policy space at large?
Yeah, I mean, I think the policy space in India has evolved quite fast over the last 2 decades, right? And I think there was a time where, when I plunged into it, I thought, oh God, why are we waiting for so long for simple changes to happen? And now today you have a lot more willingness for bureaucrats, a lot more willingness by the ministers, by MPs, MLAs to listen to issues, to get educated by diverse opinions, right? When we first
Yeah.
presented the Belandur Action Report and what we had in mind to the then Bangalore Development Minister, Mr. KJ George, he actually called for consultation wherein he said, hey, you know what? There are many people who have been telling me different things about this. Why don't we all come together and learn from each other, right? And that was a very interesting phenomenon where in day long in Vikas Sauda, so many people came in and shared their different perspectives and said, here is the science, here is a change possible, here is what we should experiment, and here is what is possible, right? And rallying around people like that to a problem that is too big even for any single institution, right? And bringing in diverse thought processes, consolidating them into an action plan and taking it forward, right? I think that collaboration is today possible in this public policy space. And anybody who's involved in politics or public policy today cannot afford to remain insular in their thought process and say this is the only right way. They should be able to try and learn from different actors, different stakeholders, map their interests, map their competencies, and leverage everything to go forward, right? And that's a wonderful thing that
Yeah.
is happening today in the civil society space as well as public policy space in India. And the recent reports which showed that how governments are dependent on external knowledge and experts is also very well evident, where government is coming and seeking expertise from outside and saying, okay, we don't know enough about taxation. We know we had a particular view, but now today we are willing to change. What are the changes that you would like to recommend to us? And hence this has happened across sectors, and that's a welcome change.
No, totally. The most fascinating thing for me, Sridhar, from what you mentioned, the bit about policy education, right, as well. How would you define the landscape? How does the policy education landscape in India look like today, right? Uh, yeah, like what kind of students are you getting? What choices are they making? Why are they studying public policy, right? What kind of jobs are they doing after that? And even in terms of, how the schools, because in the last 5 years alone, I think a lot of policy schools have opened up in India, right? Not just the ones you worked
That's
on,
right.
even in general, right? There's ISPP, even Jindal, I think they have a program, the St. Xavier's
Yes.
Mumbai. There's so many of them. So how is that whole piece shaping out?
Yeah, and I think where this whole space is evolving is that uh, each of the each of the institution that has come about has played on its strength,
Right.
right? Like National Law School is heavily based on a legal background from which they are playing forward.
Hmm.
When I in Bangalore was offering the public policy program PGPPM, that had a fair amount of embedded knowledge from the public sector management that IIMB was very much well known for. So they brought in a whole lot of that experience, public sector management experience. And similarly, when we built Kautilya, the thought process was how do we look at Western frameworks and Indian context, right?
Hmm.
And how do you blend this and make it a holistic alignment?
Hmm.
And at MIT School of Government, our whole approach is trying that how do you build people first processes? How do you blend expertise with how people receive policies, or how do they appreciate policies? And I think these are different starting points, and they will all converge in one way or the other to make the policy ecosystem change. In terms of employment space as well, right? I mean, there was a time where there used to be one or two CM fellowships that used to open. But today, now you have many states who have started the fellowship programs. And that's a welcome move, right? The second thing is also many ministries are starting to add young
Yeah.
fellows, right?
Yeah.
That is a good space, right? Where students can map out particular sectors that they are interested, or particular geographies that they are interested in, and go and join those fellowships, right? There's
Yeah.
something called as tulip fellowships, which is in the urban space, right? And hence, from time to time, this whole sector is opening up. There has
Yeah.
been some amount of angst in people's space that lateral entry is not happening as much.
Hmm.
But the government also has made some progress on that. There were There are at least half a dozen joint secretary level people who were hired a couple of years back. And I think that is going to also become more and more prevalent and rampant going forward, because the government will also start appreciating how people from private sector or even from civil
Yeah.
society space are
Yeah.
able to bring in different tools and processes and embed them into the government systems. And I think this has been a useful change. And I think the sector is opening up. There are a lot of interested people, a lot of very interesting ideas that are acted upon, and then they're becoming more impactful these days.
But why should I get a policy education, Sridhar? If I'm a 21-year-old who's recently graduated, right? And this is mostly at the mass postgrad level, right? Undergrad is very far and few. Why should I get an education public policy? And also while I'm making that choice, right? And since you work across schools, what are the 4 or 5 things I should be mindful of, like, while making the choice?
So one of the things is for you to understand where is your inherent bias in the change, right? You should have your own theory of change. It could change with time, but at least you need to figure out and say what are the kind of jobs that I'm aspiring for
Right.
2 years after you finish your policy education, right?
Hmm.
So that's important for you to fix as an anchor, so that post your graduation you are not wasting a lot more time to find avenues to get into it, right? But after having said that, I would always urge you to look at exploring various learning paths and trajectories while you are doing here. If you come from the arts background, get into number crunching, understand how technology works and
Yeah.
how technology impacts you,
Yeah.
right? And you need to kind of challenge yourself during a public policy program and learn from the far end, not just be comfortable saying that I'll only stick to my area of expertise, right? For example, when in my initial years, I remember how I was actually guided through a very nice process of understanding the consultative space. How do you listen more often than kind of just uh, try to arrive at a solution very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of helped me absorb and say that technology or process is not the solution, but how do you blend technology and process to make a solution, right? So becoming a truly transdisciplinary thinker is important, right?
Yeah.
And third is also about understanding different stakeholders, right? How or where are their interests and how do you align them? If you
Yeah.
can map this into your journey over the 2 years, you are definitely looking forward to a good career in public policy. It's not a short run sprint, it's a long run sprint, right? So for that, you need to first get different disciplinary approaches and then choose your own domains where you want to make impact, right? You need not stick to the same domain forever, but at least in the initial first 3 to 5 years of your career, it's better that you stick into one domain and learn as much as possible around that domain. And that will give you a deeper understanding of looking at a context and breaking down the context and bringing in change in a context. And
Got
post that different domains, no matter where you shift to, there are always transferable skills from this experience, right?
Yeah. No,
For example,
totally.
my whole approach, even to this day, is grounded on decentralization, citizen participation, accountability, and transparency, right?
Yeah.
And wherever I see that any kind of public policy challenges that we see, there are at least two of these problems that are still pertaining there.
Yeah.
There is either over centralization, there is information asymmetry, and sometimes there is lack of competence itself, right? So
Yeah.
I think if you kind of start factoring in these things and say which is your core area, which are the things that are your strengths, you can build the complementary strengths and build a career path for yourself.
Uh, but tell me more about what do you teach at the policy school, right? So understand that's probably, fairly broad base, Sridhar, right? The bit of econ maybe, right? Say history, writing, communications, right? But still, if there are some modules that you can throw your light on, right? In general, right? That what is taught at a policy school, right? What does policy education get in that sense? And also, where do students work after an education, a degree in public policy?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I always emphasize is that a good, strong grounding in statistics and economics is important. no
Right.
matter where you are, right?
Yeah.
You may not be doing that for the rest of your lives, but at least you should be able to have a long and hard conversation with a fully trained economist or a fully trained statistician and
Yeah.
understand the different options that are there for you,
Yeah.
understand the different constraints that are likely to be imposed on you,
Yeah.
and then be able to take an educated guess around that, right?
Yeah.
And that will happen only when you merge yourself into these courses full on and deeper into it.
Yeah.
Understanding the social sciences is important, right? What are these processes? Where do we come from, right? I mean, what has been our history? What has been our shared values? All of these are very important for people to understand. And
Yeah.
sometimes in our tech and number focused world, we have not paid enough of primacy in this in the undergraduate space. If you are primarily either from a medicine, engineering, or management background, right? So getting a fair appreciation of these, where do we come from, what do we stand for, is also very important, right?
Right.
For instance, at the School of Government, one of the things that we teach is the social and economic ideologies of India, right? And that's very important for us to kind of push and understand what have been the competing ideologies that have played up over a period of time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not that just today India is taking a particular stance. This particular stance has been probably an extreme on the other side, maybe 2.5 decades ago. And why was that? Why did that thrive at that point of time? But why is the nation today looking at a very different stance? So understanding these competing socio-economic and political ideologies is important, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that you should also have a fair appreciation is the working of the Indian Constitution. This is another subject where we teach our students, where we help them to get a fair appreciation of what is the Constitution, how do the amendments get made,
Yeah.
and how when do the courts intervene and look at some amendment or some law to be ultra virus, right?
Yeah.
This journey is very important, and understanding these processes are very important. And in addition to this, the whole set of processes of lawmaking,
Yeah.
the policy making, the consultation, and how do you derive out of it, right? Because a change, a slogan for a change, a campaign for change is all poetry.
Yeah.
Until unless it's followed by prose of what is the draft, what is the bill, what is the act, all of this have to fall in place, right? And
Mm.
so that's the fourth complement. I think these are essential bedrock of any public policy education. And you can pick and choose what are your starting points, how much strength you want to give into all of these things, right? And finally, today, leadership and communication play a very important role. And I
Absolutely.
think that is essential mix, right? Here, for example, there is a lot of emphasis of understanding the journeys of different political leaders. Here is an appreciation, getting an appreciation of different change makers in the policy arena. How is it that the green revolution happened in India? How is it that the milk revolution happened in India? And I think getting into micro nuances of this at a much deeper depth is very important, right?
Right.
So that journeys are important for any public policy education in India. Similarly, looking abroad and seeing that what are the different ideas that are germinating elsewhere.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
scanning ability to scan developments in different geographies also helps. And this comes to the on the careers path today. Business, government, and society are all looking for people who have a good policy and politics education, right? Our alumni from the School of Government are working in various ministries. They are working as OSDs to ministers, chief ministers. They're working in party offices. They are
Right.
working with for-profit companies, with civil society organizations. So our alumni from the School of Government have really kind of found their path over the last 2 decades and are thriving in different careers.
Can you tell me something, Sridhar, that what also needs to change? Like, what's the path for policy education in India over the next 2, 3, 5 years, right? Maybe a couple of things, if you could specifically also highlight that, you hope, or maybe you're already working on, right? Improving or changing so that the space thrives and grows and serves the students better.
I think the first thing I would hope, not just in the education space, but from the government space, is that the lateral entry opens up, right? And
Yeah.
it's India is at a time where this reform can happen. And I think if that happens, the government will benefit with a lot of fresh ideas coming into it, rather than it being a Chinese walled garden, right?
Yeah.
So that's first change that I would urge. The second is the whole transformation that we are seeing in our own education space. The concept of majors and minors, which are probably not very related to each other. Earlier, if you're choosing computer science, you could not study anything from the humanities space. Today at the MIT World Peace University, you could look at getting a major in computer science, but also a minor in public policy
Right.
or related fields, right? So this is the second, big change that I'm seeing that happening as we speak with academic leadership here that I work with, right? So that's the second important leadership change that I see. The third is also the whole mentality of a fixed job, right? And I think our parents are all went to the same job for 3.5 decades and retired one fine day.
Yeah.
And that's changing today, where probably our work spans are probably 4, 5, 6 years old, right? I think that's a very interesting thing. And maybe in the near future, people may not even hang on to a job for more than 2 to 3 years, right? So what is shifting in this space? How do people see careers very differently is also a change that I would urge all public policy professionals to look out for and say,
Yeah.
how do I navigate my trajectory?
Yeah.
Right? I think these three shifts from government, academic institutions, and from self are three different changes that we could aspire for.
No, couldn't agree more, Shida. In fact, the whole careers bit, right? So, see, policy right now has a lot of jobs. It doesn't have too many careers, right? Jobs and careers are slightly different in that sense. And although while that is definitely changing and for the good, right? I also see, that people of say my age or younger, like, maybe mid-20s and all, and of course around that ballpark, they're also looking at careers a little differently, Shida, right? In the sense, I know, and there's a very recent example. I was talking to someone, a friend, she has a background in communication in graphic design, right? She wanted to work in policy. And what she's now started doing, she does freelance consulting where she helps policy organizations communicate their policy ideas better, right? And she was recently telling me how that, Yash, I get to read about policy issues, right? And learn about them while seeing to my core competency, right? And that is now her career, for now at least, right? And maybe she'll do something else. Like the point being is this very unique how people look at careers now, right? It's not that you end up in a job or in a particular field and stay there for the rest of your lives, right? A lot of micro careers, so to speak. But yeah, so couldn't agree more. Speaking of policy education, what role has the education played in your own sort of, journey, Shida, right? Especially if someone with a tech and management background, right? We have already discussed that you could have chosen to do anything at all, right? Especially, but something that you chose out of, and a number of reasons. But what role has that education played in the sense, does it allow you to look at policy issues a little differently, right? Or just, give you different perspectives with how you approach these problems?
Yeah, I mean that option has always been telling that I can wake up one day and go back to a tech and management consulting or any of
Yeah.
those roles.
Yeah.
But it's always about the change that I'm able to see, the impact I'm able to see of the work that I have been doing, right? And I think that's what has been a blessing for me, right? And I think the when I looked at the career change itself, right? In the computing world, there is a 0 or a 1, right? Many
Yeah.
of the things in life is binary.
Yeah.
And that's how you start writing your logic and your own programs and your own logic flows.
Yeah.
But when it comes to dealing with people, it's very rarely binary. And when it comes to also dealing with groups of people, it's again rarely binary, right? So governing a nation of the scale of India is not easy. Governing a scale of a country of our size, we should be able to understand people at very, very nuanced level, the processes at also at a very deep level, right? So sometimes you will not have short fixes of trying to say, oh, here is a quick fix solution that I'll bring out to you. I think that has been the learning for me, that I've been able to start appreciating complexities and start looking for simple solutions.
Yeah.
And those simple solutions may often take a long time. It's not instantaneous as we want. So I think if we can move back from an instantaneous mode of finding solutions to understanding that solution path could be iterative. Sometimes we'll make small discoveries and then we will go on to large discoveries. I think that's the essential part of transitioning from a tech and management world to the policy world that at least I benefited from.
Yeah, I was reading recently. In fact, I think this is something we discussed, when we met a couple of days back, right? Which was that the problem with the difference that is that engineers work on steady systems, right? So if you know that X plus Y will get you to Z, it will get you to Z every single time, right? But
Yeah,
otherwise, we're working on complex, dynamic social systems in policy, right? So you can never predict the outcome fully, right? Even if
yeah.
you just have a guidelines, right? Just be a prediction machine in that sense. So no, couldn't agree more. Final question, right? That what would your advice be to those looking to build a career in the broader public policy space, right, in India, policy and social impact? And please feel free to be descriptive. Would love to learn.
Oh, I mean, if this is where your heart is, just jump in, right? Don't worry too much about where you will where you will end up. First thing is, of course, make sure of your parachutes. Take care of your educational loans, home loans, car EMIs, etc. If you have any of those,
Yeah,
don't jump blindly. Take care of
yeah,
that. Have a plan B in place. But I think this is a very exciting place. India is changing at a very, very fast pace than the previous 75 years of our independent existence. Today, as we are talking about governing AI. Our drone management is probably one of the most liberal in the world, right? I
yeah,
mean, we could have chosen to be very, very restrictive in the nature of how we did many other things. But
yeah,
somewhere our drone policy is far more progressive than any other things, right? So a lot of these things give us hope of how do you look at regulation, how do you look at policy changes, and how do you look at a shared space between private sector and public sector on areas which were earlier only confined to public sector,
yeah,
right? I think this space is good. Some collaborative effort will unlock a lot more value than what has been unlocked in the past, right? You couldn't imagine a civil aviation minister not running Indian Airlines or Air India, right? But today it's possible, right?
yeah,
And hopefully we will also kind of look at some of those transitions happen in other sectors too, right? I think that's the mindset that we have to look at. Look at aviation sector and say, how could I replicate this in our own sector, right? And aviation sector is another example where it's booming now, right? Where you have multiple players. You can have many more players. That's a wish list. You don't want the same old existing three and a
absolutely.
half players to
Yeah,
restrict your choices.
yeah,
But take that as an example and say that, okay, fine, can we get more and more players in the next iteration in the next sector, right?
yeah.
I think that's the hope that I have.
No, that's very helpful, Shida. And I think the broad takeaway for me also has been that a policy education is not just vocational, right? In the sense that just not about that you get to an end job, right? But it's also very, in a sense, instructive, right? That just a lot of skills that you can pick up and take anywhere else, right? A lot of that honestly does boil down to what you make out of that education as well. I've had people doing
Yeah.
phenomenally well without any policy education, and I've had people to struggle just a bit, right, with the whole job scene even after a policy sort of degree, right? So in the end, does boil down a lot to what you make of it. Again, people care about the work you have done. So internships, volunteering, whatever you have, get your hands dirty, right? Just learn as much as you can, and eventually it just works out. Right? No learning goes to waste, so to speak. But thank you so much for joining us today and taking out the time this evening, Shida. Means a lot. And for all our guests, right, we link Shida's profile in the show notes, right? There's so much to learn from him. My God. Like, it's just the sheer breadth of all that he's worked on. So do get in touch. He's very kind, very happy to help, right? And yeah, do let us know in comments who we should get as guests next. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Shida. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Yash. It's been a pleasure being part of the Policy Panchayat. Bye bye.